Great, thank you. You're live now, Councillor.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Small Heath Ward Forum meeting. Can I just welcome everyone in terms of joining the meeting? It's nice to be able to discuss issues for the ward and meet people again online. Before we start, I'd just like to announce that this is a online meeting. It is recorded. This is for making the meeting available at a future for its record. So please bear that in mind. We have a number of people who we've invited along to the meeting today. We have Councillor John O'Shea, who is the Cabinet Member for Street Scene and Parks. We've asked John to come along because on the previous meetings, a number of residents have raised issues of waste dumping as well as general waste management issues. So that's why we asked John O'Shea to come along and to give us a feedback in terms of what the waste service is doing and how we can progress matters in Small Heath. In addition to that, we have Catherine Lloyd, Jess Phillips, Member of Parliament for Yardley. She is also here to give us some input in terms of ward plan and priorities. We will also be joined by, at some stage, Liam Byrne, Member of Parliament. I believe he's in another meeting at the moment and is not able to join us. But we also have Jamie Tennant, who is a member of Liam's office. He's with us in terms of providing some feedback. Once we've had the Small Heath Ward plan and issues discussing plan of action, then you'll have some councillor updates from myself, plus information regarding police. And then we will allow residents, yourselves, or any volunteer groups to ask questions that are concerning current issues regarding the ward. So without any further ado, I'll pass it over to John so he can make his presentation. John.
Thank you, Zahir. Just firing up the presentation.
Councillor Shay's on the screen now.
Is it on screen? Okay, so I can't tell from where I am. So.
Okay.
Yeah, you got your presentation on the screen.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, what we'll do is we'll talk about what we are planning to do for actually the whole of the city, but also the special stuff we're doing for Small Heath and some other of our key wards over the coming year. And we know, because frankly you tell us, that probably the biggest issue in the city is keeping the streets cleaner and greener, and that's going to be our focus for the next 12 months and indeed beyond. And we've launched a number of initiatives and got a few more to come out yet that will hopefully improve the state of the city. I should say, to start of this, that we've had a very difficult 18 months. We have not been unaffected by COVID and by lockdowns. The focus from the start was to maintain our refuse collection service, and broadly we have done that. There have been days and weeks where it has fallen over a little bit, but we have not had to draw down the service as we were considering at some points when we started out in March last year. But to do that, we have taken staff, and we're still taking staff now, from our street cleansing operation. So that means that street cleansing has suffered. absolutely suffered over the past 18 months because we've decided to keep the refuse collection service functioning. That decision we took early on, and I think it was the right one at the time. But what we're going to do in the next 12 months or so, I would like to start with explaining just how big our city is. We have the largest collection service run by a local authority in this country. We put out over 170 bin rounds every single day, and we do something of the order of 2.5 million collections a month. These are big numbers. It's 1,000 tonnes of waste a day we're collecting across businesses and domestic premises across the city. Also, put a couple of other figures in there just so we understand how big my portfolio is. We've got 591 parks coming from 14 square miles of the city, 2,000 miles of road, and we service a city of over 1 million people with just shy of 500,000 homes. So it's a big operation we run here, and it's totally in-house. And perhaps to remind people of where we were 2.5 years ago, we come out at the end of a strike, but we were dropping 600 roads across the city at the end of every week. In June this year, we were down to 4 a week. Had a bit of a fluctuation since then. The second doses of the vaccine did actually quite affect some of our crews quite badly, and we've been affected, as everybody else has been, by the ongoing infections and isolation that's happening at the moment. So we are losing crews off and on throughout that. But I think what we have done in the past 2 years is re-establish relationship with our workforce and with our trade unions, and we are working much more effectively and more closely together. So the service across the city has improved massively, but we still have a long way to go, and don't ever think I'm going to deny that. It's also worth noting, I think some of the stuff we do is a debate. Is it there's a need for a service, or is it a service failure? If you look at the bottom left-hand corner there, so that's quite a familiar sight to many people I know. That's dumping of rubbish out of a house, but it's on private land. And now that is not our duty to clear that. Similarly, with the one above that, that's waste dumped on private land. At the top of the middle, you've got some trade waste bins that are overflowing. Now, that's actually a need for service. The owner of those bins, the shop, should actually be having probably a third bin they're paying for, and that should be taken out with enforcement. And the other two pictures, you can see examples of really common examples of fly tipping. Tyres are a problem across the city. Again, that's dodgy tyre firms not wanting to pay for legal disposal, and they just dump them on the streets. There's a big problem with that around the Small Heath Leadership Academy, I know. And similarly, this is more about litter than anything else. We have litter that's dumped there, rubbish, and the top left picture there is done at night after we finished our work in the city centre, and before our crews come on in the morning. That'll be gone within a couple of hours, but that's what we have to face. I also make this point whenever I talk to people that fly tipping and litter is an issue of poverty. If you overlay the maps showing deprivation in the city over any of these three maps, and from left they show us hotspots for fly tipping, hotspots for detritus, which is build-up of general mess, leaf, mulch and everything else on the roads, and for litter, you see you will overlay that with our maps on deprivation, and they are really, really close. It is our poorest residents who get affected most by fly tipping. Just not a quick idea of data. I haven't updated this in the past few weeks, but you can see, and actually the trend has leveled off a bit. But you can see the volume of complaints we're getting. The top graph, the left-hand side, is going back to 2019, and you can see that we were running about the 400, 500 complaints a week. Then over the course of 2020, and of course the lockdown, that rockets up to upwards towards 1,000 a week, and it's currently rattling around the 800 complaints a week at the moment. So it's somewhere in between the two. The bottom graph shows the volume per ward. And you see our worst affected ward is Sparkbrook and Borsal Heath East, which is a bit to the west of you. Small Heath sits there at 5th in the city. It's not an enviable place to be, and it's where we want to get you down from there. Those top 5 or 6 wards, you can just see the impact that they have. That small Sparkbrook, for example, is the equivalent of probably most of the bottom half of that table, just in one ward. That's how serious this is. But it's also worth saying there was a national increase in fly tipping. This is not a purely Birmingham problem. It happened across the country, and there's an awful lot to do with commercial fly tipping as well. So what are we doing? Well, we are about to launch our what we call the Wall of Shame. We've actually got 19 cameras now that belong to Waste Enforcement, and I've just signed off yesterday on our new policy to allow us to start publicising this. But we will be putting out videos and still images asking you to help us identify fly tippers. The example there's a video behind that, but you can find it on YouTube. If you Google Barking and Dagenham Wall of Shame, we've stolen an idea from them, and they run these videos roughly every quarter, and they get a £400 fine out of every video sequence they run, and they're quite light-hearted, but they ask you to identify people who are illegally dumping rubbish, and you're going to see who it is, and it is going to be your neighbours. There is commercial stuff going on, but it's also your neighbours that's doing it. And Barking say that they've had husbands grass up their wives and children grass up their parents. There's no reward for this other than helping you get your streets cleaner and tidier. So that'll be starting out over the course of the autumn. You'll start to see those pictures appearing. The cameras are not covert. They are visible cameras. It's actually very, very hard to get covert cameras deployed these days. We have to go to court to get permission to do so, and the evidence required is really quite hefty. So it's much easier to use overt cameras and help to use a deterrent as well. We are running the Love Your Street scheme, something we launched 18 months ago. And this is an example on Washwood Heath Road, where it's a team that includes our refuse crews. It includes people from highways enforcement. We're taking people from Veolia to get some advice on recycling. We're taking parking enforcement to tackle illegal parking, dangerous parking, obstruction. And the police like coming out as well, because it's a great chance to get out with a whole range of agencies and talk to people. And we found that one morning on Allen Rock Road, we cleared almost 4 tons of rubbish. And we'll talk to business about a whole pile of other things about what they're doing as well. And we'll check on what they're doing in terms of whether they've got enough waste provision to get rid of their trade waste. Because trade waste is not a free service. Trade waste, you should be paying for that. And if you aren't, then you are taking an advantage over other businesses that are. And you have to have a duty of care certificate to show how you're getting rid of your waste. In June this year, we ran our first scheme under this, and massive success. Brought our community volunteers along with that. The local councillors loved it. Actually, really good to see the housing associations coming out, because they hadn't always engaged with us on this. But really good to get stuff cleared up and tidied up, and all the efforts, and we're doing more of these. We're actually struggling to recruit staff to this. There is a problem across the service with the lack of drivers. Commercial drivers need to be HGV qualified drivers, and as you may be aware, they are quite hard to find, and we can't get them through agencies. So this is a bit of a slow start, because we can't get people to staff this part of the service, but it will roll out and do more. Something that has worked really well has been the support we're putting out for communities. We have, as I said, put out over 5,000 pieces of equipment and over 20,000 of our new blue bags you can see being used there. The little trolley you can see in the middle, that's what we call the Street Boss. That replaces the bigger trolleys we had for a couple of years ago that were just too big to store. That's about a quarter to a third the size, still takes up two bags. And carries a whole range of tools. That you have to see that one in use 2 hours after we issued it from our stores in Montague Street. We've got a lot of people out there who are really helping, and we want to do more of that. So we have a training package to get people to allow them to work safely on the highway. We can provide all the kit they need, the bags, the litter pickers, the bag hoops, anything you need. We can support that, and we'll also take away the rubbish after you've piled it up. But asking people to help us to help them. Bit of good news particularly for Small Heath, but also for 5 other wards. We have restored the cuts that were made a couple of years ago to our waste enforcement unit. That's now back up 23 officers, and they work across the city. But we've also now employed 6 officers specifically to deal with the top 6 wards, including Small Heath, and they are now on board, completing their training, and they'll be coming out to meet the councillors and start talking to residents in the next few weeks. They are dedicated to your ward, so they are not to be sent off to go and do stuff in Northfield or Sutton Coldfield or indeed the rest of Yardley. There'll be one assigned to Small Heath, and they may work across each other's wards to support each other from time to time, but their focus is on their ward, and they're going to try and make it better. And they'll be doing that by giving advice, and if we need to do more in terms of getting an enforcement officer in to put a bit more weight behind that, we'll do that. But education is our first resort on this stuff rather than punishment. But if we need to, we will enforce. We've putting on 3 new graffiti teams to work across the city. That's doubling the number we've got now. But even that is not going to be enough. The amount of graffiti out there and the speed at which it gets replaced once we remove it is frankly quite terrifying. They did about a mile of graffiti in Sturchley a few months ago, and it was back within 2 days. So again, that's a constant fight for us. We're putting in 4 new dedicated fly tipping crews, 3 across the city around out of the Redfern Depot and 1 in the west. And these are not part of the war cleaning crews. They do other things, and they are targeted on picking up fly tipping. Also bringing in 3 new deep clean teams, which again are focused on particular areas, and they'll come in and just as a hit squad hit a particular target, and your councillors can talk to the team at Redfern to find out where they're being deployed in Small Heath. One of the ones that we've been trying to tackle is the problem of flats above shops, particularly. This is a headache. I know it's in Small Heath and of course other parts of the city. And so the background is 50 years ago, if you owned a shop, you probably lived above it in the flat. Then during the 70s, 80s and 90s, the flats really ceased to be used as flats and became storage areas for the shops. And in the past 20 years, they've now become rental properties and are now being occupied again, but not by the shop owners. So we have a particular problem, as do other cities. This is, again, not unique to Birmingham, where these properties simply do not have storage space for their rubbish. And I have some sympathy for this. And you wouldn't want to have your black bag of rubbish sat in your kitchen from Sunday through to Wednesday when the collection day is. So the residents do put out on the streets, and we find it very hard to tackle that. And frankly, the only way of dealing with that, what we started now, is we're putting out 10 new crews specifically targeting the black bag runs, like the Coventry Road, Stratford Road, Soho Road, and bits of the Warwick Road, amongst others, where we do get these problems with bags piling up, and they are tasked to go in there and clear away these black bags. And we should now be doing essentially 3 collections a week down those roads, because that is really the only way to deal with this. The properties do not have the facilities to store rubbish. Where we have some of the smaller runs of shops, the small parades in more suburban areas, we're also going to be reviewing the use of wheelie bins. And we've got some Gough Road over in Sparkbrook, for example, that's going to have wheelie bins deployed to it. That's not a parade of shops, but that was red carded almost 10 years ago when we started the rollout of wheelie bins, because they don't have any off-street storage area for bins, so they would not issue wheelie bins. but we found that a number of residents actually prefer to have the wheelie bin out on the street. Okay, it looks untidy, it's an obstruction on the street, but you don't get the rubbish in the same way you do with black bags. So we're looking at that, and so if we have a small run of shops, it may well be worthwhile moving the flats onto wheelie bins and seeing whether that improves the collection routine. We'll also need to make sure that we are able to carry out inspections on the shops quite regularly, because what we don't want to do is to end up with us collecting the trade waste free of charge, and that is chargeable, and the shop should be paying for that separately. So that's happening now. We've just launched and started in the Redfern depot, so the east of the city, in the past couple of weeks, our brand new mobile household recycling centre. Now that will hit all the wards in the city across the next 12 months. But it will be focused, again, as everything is here, we are data driven and we are focusing on the areas that need it most. So we're deploying the normal compactor wagon, which you see on the left hand side of the picture. We're sending out a vehicle to collect items for reuse, or fridges and freezers on the right hand side. We're trying to avoid them coming in, but they do come in from time to time. And the middle vehicle is one of our 4 specialist vehicles we've hired in. And it's got different compartments for different items. So there's a compartment there for fabric, we can take mattresses, we can take plastic bottles, and we can divide that for recycling. And these are collecting varying amounts. They came to my own ward the other week, and we got, I think it was 4 tons of waste out of them in the morning. Went off to Lozells, and they got 11 tons in a day. The record so far is held by Quinton, where they got 21 tons. So it varies from site to site, but it's working really well. That'll be advertised when it attends. We'll advertise that through local community groups, and also through your councillors and through your MPs, so they can get the word out. What we don't want to do is really advertise them too widely, because I don't want people driving across the city to bring stuff to these sites. It's very much about providing a local provision for quite a small area. So those are rolling out now. They are massively popular, and in fact, I saw today, Cardiff are looking at nicking the idea. So this is working really well. And if your councillors have any ideas about locations for them to go in Small Heath, bring them up, and we'll try and sort that out. We've got other stuff to do. We've got working on communications. This is still in progress, but we're working with Keep Britain Tidy to provide some what we call behavioural change stuff. And you see the bottom picture there is a pile of waste, and that's been taped up with grime scene tape. And the idea is we'll come out one day, tape it up, and then we'll leave a couple of days, and then come back and remove it. It's just to remind people of what is being done there. And fly tipping is not a victimless crime, but it is a crime. If you are fly tipping, you are committing a criminal offence, and we will seek to prosecute, and we will get you, and you will get fined. If we can, we'll get you jailed, get your car off you. So there's some work to do there with communities, and really to advise people. Again, this is about the education side of it. How can we teach you a bit more about fly tipping and why to do it? That we're going to be announcing a bit more in the next month or so. Just so we launched all this back in June, and just to say that we got some of the best coverage for the council we've had in a decade. A lot of coverage on social media and a lot of coverage on the traditional media. So it's been a big success, and we're getting pick up from other authorities now. They want to basically nick our ideas, which I'm happy, because we'll nick theirs. And to remind people that we do enforcement. We work closely with the police. We will flag vehicles that we know are involved with fly tipping, and they'll stop them, and we'll take them off you. By and large, the ones we confiscate and get to retain after the conviction, we crush them. And that's not because we want to waste the vehicles. Unfortunately, most of them are in a poor state. Professional fly tippers don't care about the environment, and they don't care about the vehicles they drive either. This chap here, fly tips, 11 tons of waste on a front garden in Handsworth. He was sent to jail for 5 months. Now, just to say, he was sent to jail for 5 months, but he was already in jail for armed robbery. And the vehicle he lost was a large lorry and was completely unroadworthy. So we couldn't bring it back into use. We crashed it. Because more of our cases, bloke dumped 7 tons of building waste and garden waste in Ward End. 13 months in jail. We got 2 vans out of that one. Another business decided to dump trade waste outside Walsall Road allotments. £1,500 in fine and costs. Chap in Solihull decided to drive across to Billsy and dump his waste there. That was £6 grand for that. One of our residents in Handsworth could have gone to the tip instead, but decided not to. Dumped his in trade waste bins, £1,500, and also because the police are watching, he got done for driving that insurance as well. This is one of our traders. Rather than her trade waste contract, they decided to dump it on the street. We caught them, prosecuted them, and got the best part of £1,500 out of them. And we've had a couple more lately. We've done a very, very good prosecution of a gentleman who decided to drive from Rednall to Baker Street, top end of Small Heath, and he did that twice. And he's got a fine over £1,000, including costs. And we've got other prosecutions that are in the pipeline now, including one that should have been finalised today that I haven't got confirmation on yet. So we are prosecuting. We are able to work with video evidence that people will supply to us. We'll be able to do more with our own video evidence. And when we get convictions, we're going to talk a lot more about them, because I'm committed to tackling fly tipping on the streets of this city. And I will keep saying it. It is a criminal offence. I have no problem at all with people who commit criminal offences paying the fines and being jailed for it. You deserve better in this city, and we're going to try and do our best to deliver it. So thank you, Chair. I'll take any questions. I thought it had to be in chat, I think, for this, don't they?
Thank you very much, John, for that presentation. I've been looking at the chat in terms of whether there are any questions. There's one question here: why has the council repeatedly failed Small Heath?
I mean, I'm a bit more detail than that, and I don't know in what context.
Well, I suppose if you take it from the point of view of waste collection.
Right. Well, as I said, yes, we accept things haven't gone particularly well, but they haven't gone well across the city. But we are putting resources now to support Small Heath and other parts of the city as well.
Okay, give me a second. I've just got one published here. It's what do the councillors need to be doing with you to help clean up Small Heath?
I mean, you can help us with finding locations for our mobile household recycling centres. We will help you with equipment if you want to support with litter picks. We can provide all that kit. And one thing you can do is help remind people of the facilities available to get rid of waste free of charge. You are not far away from the ties of the HRC. There is really no excuse. There are a range of ways of getting rid of rubbish safely and legally, and I really need to urge people to do that. A lot of the rubbish on the streets of Small Heath comes from the people of Small Heath, and there is a problem with bad landlords who do empty out the rubbish from properties where they have evicted their tenants. And if we identify those, we can try and tackle them. But we don't want it there. It's a small minority of people who do this, but we will go after them. We will prosecute them. The other thing I want to say is there's also about the education here. Something that came up when we were doing the work in Washwood Heath was that there are a number of people who don't know how we dispose of waste in this country. There are a lot of countries around Europe where you don't have a waste collection the same way that we do it. You actually have to have a personal contract. I think it applies in Russia. I think it applies in Ireland and Poland as well. So there isn't a municipal collection service in the way that we provide in Birmingham. And people may well come here and assume that they have to do the same thing and don't know how to do it in this country. And we had a number of people who simply weren't aware about the free access to our household recycling centres. It really was quite a surprise to us when we did that work. So there's education there as well. And I want to work more with people like Cllr, who do some great work in engaging with the Eastern European community. And again, you can give us access into other parts of the community in Small Heath, so we can get the education out there and tell people what's out there.
Sorry, John. Can I make a point, please?
Yeah, sure, Councillor.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I apologise for coming to the meeting late. I had technical issues first of all. John, listen to what you've got to say. Just on what you've just wanted to add something to what you just said. I don't think it's fair to imply that people who come from a different country don't know how to dispose of the waste. It's not just people from other countries that are European backgrounds. I think that a lot of the people that are fly tipping, it's a mixture of people from different backgrounds and ethnicities. So I don't think that it would be fair to imply or say that it is someone that is from a European background. And I think that the other thing I want to just add is that the Love Your Streets cleanup organised for the Border Green ward on the Country Road side back just before lockdown was very successful. So it's good to hear that you're now sort of getting the team back up and running. So hopefully we can work together and get one organised for Country Road or any other part of the Small Heath ward in the near future. And on the point that you've made about the mobile recycling centre, I organised that to be on the Barnesville Close, and I was there on Tuesday morning, and it was absolutely fantastic. We had 2 trucks removing 4.5 tons is one truck, they told me. So we had 2, so that's 9 tons of waste just in that one, and that doesn't include the other waste truck which has the recycling. So it was absolutely amazing, and I think that it's really, really great. And I'm not surprised that other cities and towns are taking up the idea, because it's very, very productive and it's a really good way of getting rid of the waste. We actually had someone from Stetchford go down to Small Heath, so I appreciate why we're not widely advertising this, because of course we'll start getting other people in and won't be fair for the residents of our ward in Small Heath. So there's quite a lot of things going on. I have one concern, and I've been raising this concern with yourself previously. Is to the waste that is for the residents that live above shops or live in flats and that do not have wheelie bins. Now I know you made the point that there's something that's going to be happening, but can I ask you, you're in a ward and the residents of Country Road that live above the shops in the flats. I know, as well as that, we've got residents on Charles Road as well, which has been a massive fly tipping hotspot, and we've actually got started a petition for that. So can you just comment on that, please? Thank you.
Sorry, that last piece wasn't very clear. If I just say something about the comment, I'm not implying that the fly tipping is coming from Eastern Europeans or anybody else. I'm simply saying that when we did our work in Washford Heath, it was very clear there are people who did not understand how to dispose of waste in this country, and that's our educational side. We need to make sure that they are aware of that. We know there's a fly tipping. The bloke who jumped into the rubbish on Baker Street was in Rednall. We don't care where they come from. We don't want them to bring it to Small Heath or any other part of our city. But I'm certainly not blaming any one community for this, because it is all communities that do it. There is a significant commercial aspect to it, and there's also an aspect of organised crime. They are very, very much into disposing of waste illegally. And my appeal on this is always, if you get a bloke at your door sorry, it is usually a bloke with a white van. And again, sorry, it is a white van. Want to take rubbish away for 20 quid. It's not going to end up in an approved site. It's not going to be disposed of safely and properly. It's going to end up dumped somewhere on a street, quite possibly just around the corner from you. So please do not do that. There are plenty of legal and safe ways of getting rubbish. We will do it for 33 quid for up to 9 items. The Tidy Society is open. You can book and go and drive straight in within 2 hours notice. There are slots available for tomorrow. There are private firms that will take your rubbish away. If you've got a fridge freezer to get rid of, don't leave it outside for the metal collection people, because all they will take is the metal. They'll take the motor off the back and the cooling pipe work. They will dump everything else. And again, that'll be dumped somewhere on one of our streets. We will take it away. There are firms like AO who will take it away for 20 quid. You know, there's a duty on the big providers. They actually have to offer that service to take it away, and all they're allowed to charge for you is the collection cost.
Curry's take it away for £20.
Sorry?
Curry's take it away for 20.
Curry's AO, they all some sort of price, 20 quid, and I'll take it away for you, and it will dispose of and recycle properly. We've had to put a second crew onto collecting fridges across the city because there've been so many being dumped and fly tipped. And you know, putting stuff out for the metal collectors, you think you're recycling it, then all they will take is the stuff they want, and they will, because I've actually watched them do it in front of me. They will fly tip the rest. They dumped stuff outside my house a couple of years back, which is quite fun. Now, I'm sorry, Councillor Actor, I missed your comment about the black bags and Charles. Well, I got bits of it, but it wasn't very clear. So could you come back on that, please?
Yes, certainly. So I just wanted to ask you, and make you aware about the petition I've started for the residents of Charles Road in Small Heath. Charles Road, the corner of Charles Road and the junction of Hodge Road, as you may know, is a very big hotspot, and it has been for many years. So to prevent that, I have been working with a very good organisation who have been working very hard to put in place planters across the city, across the east of Birmingham rather, to deter fly tipping. The Charles Road, they've installed 3 planters, to deter this fly tipping. Now, the residents were quite concerned that they didn't have any space left to put their black bags out, but equally they were quite concerned that them black bags were attracting rubbish and fly tipping from all kinds of different shops and commercial waste and all kinds of different things, from 3-piece settees to fridges and all kinds of other things as well. So anyway, so to set up this petition, I've set up this petition for the residents, and I've also been contacted by quite a lot of press with regards to this. Now, I want to ask whether you will be able to provide bins for the residents of Charles Road that live above the flats, and as well as that, any other resident that's living above flats, above shops in flats rather, on the Country Road. As you did mention, that was something that you're going to do for the other residents across in other wards.
Sorry, John, before you answer that, and from what Councillor Akhtar said, the question, some of the questions in the chat are about that, the issue about the flat. We've got a number of flats along the Country Road. They take out their bins on the corners, but what people are asking for is, why are these flats not provided with bins to dispose their waste of?
I mean, the simple answer in a lot of cases is they don't have space to store the bins. You know, we're more than happy to look at that again. Found that typically the smaller parades in the suburban areas, they tend to have better access to the back of the shops and the flat areas, and very often they are now completely divided from the shops. So it's a better place to use those. We're more than happy to look at any option to improve the waste collection along that stretch. I know in Spark Hill we tried putting out street bins, big container bins for people to put their rubbish in. Happy to look at that, but what we have to be careful of is we can't have that used for trade waste. So if some of the shop owners, I'm sure most of them are entirely above board, but if you get some unscrupulous ones along there, decide to put their trade waste into that, that's going to overwhelm the system. You know, they actually do have to have a trade waste contract. So we'll be pursuing that with them, and with the more enforcement officers we've got on board now, be able to do more visits to those shops, and on a risk assessed basis of where we need to go and target, and challenging them to make sure they've got their processes right and they've got their collection processes in place. As I say, flat above shops are just difficult, and they're difficult not just in Birmingham. They're difficult every place that has them. Every city has them, and they are a problem everywhere because they are not used as they were used to be used, and they often don't have very good storage places for waste. So there isn't a great fix for it, but we're happy to look at any options we do have. So we have deployed large bins. If we have an appropriate place to deploy wheelie bins, we'll do that as well. You know, we're open to different ideas that's going to get our streets clean. Yeah, but it's a two-way thing. You're quite right. If you have black bags on the street, have anything else piling up, it attracts rubbish. Rubbish breeds rubbish, and we ask people to please not put it out there. But if you've got roads or areas where we can deploy wheelie bins rather than have black bags on the street, we'll happily look at that. And if we can find alternative ways of dealing with rubbish, we'll happily look at that as well.
John, in terms of commercial waste, we've had some questions from residents. What they're saying is that it's not necessarily in Small Heath. What they're saying is that incidents have been reported to the council. Evidence has been provided where commercial shops have been dumping waste. But what residents are saying is that no enforcement action has been taken against any of those shops.
I can't comment on particular cases, but I don't know them.
Of course not.
But we have to have evidence that we can take to court. Because ultimately, we're looking to prosecute somebody, and it has to be beyond reasonable doubt. It's not civil prosecution, it's a criminal prosecution. So we have to have evidence to take to court. While you, I, and everybody else may know where the rubbish has come from, and we can sit there and say, yeah, we know it came from that shop or that house. Proving it in court is a very different kettle of fish. We have to be able to say that not just that it was dumped there, but almost that you put it there. So to put a name and get somebody into the dock, and that could be really difficult. We get a lot of video evidence sent to us, which is great, and we can use it. And we have prosecutions on the basis of video evidence from residents from other places. But we also need somebody who's ultimately prepared to stand up behind that evidence and go to court. It doesn't happen very often, but we certainly do have to have a statement to confirm that the evidence, the camera footage been taken on this location, this place, and everything else. That has to be a person to do that. Without that, the evidence is no use to us, and that's the sort of level of evidence we have to get for the courts. So we'll do what we can, but we do need to support people to do it. And you know, we've had a number of cases lately where we have secure prosecutions. The two cases we've had so far this year in Baker Street, with more on the way, are as a result of help from a resident with a CCTV camera. So that's what we're using, and we'll use our own as they start rolling out in the autumn, and you know, we will start seeing impact. But above all, we've been doing this for years, and we're actually more effective than some other authorities. Solihull are panicking a bit because they're worried that and this is even before we started this program, they were getting too good at prosecutions, and we're going to start driving fly tippers across the border into Solihull. As far as I'm concerned, that's their problem. I'm worried about Birmingham. I'm worried about the areas like Small Heath that are particularly badly affected, and you know, we're going to make a difference for this. But we need support of the people of the city and support of yourselves. I know we're going to get to achieve that.
Thank you very much, John. There seems to be we've been trying to get rubbish removed from the corner of Cllr Road and Mansell Road. Paint pot, toilet paper, pan, baby bath, further down a tabletop with 5 to 9 black bags. I think again, yeah, this is a question about rubbish left on the corner. I think that one we've dealt with. It's about the commercial waste. I think one of the questions being raised is the lateness in collection of refuse and waste. If you can enlighten us with some of the what's been happening, especially during the COVID period.
I mean, we're currently running at about 98%, 99% collection rate on the day. Now the problem with that is that's 98, 99% out of 27 million collections. So that 2% is still quite a big number. We measure it more on the basis of missed collections per 100,000. We're targeting 100 per 100,000, and last week we were at about 150 per 100,000 missed collections, and that's actually doing quite well. And that's one of our best weeks for a while. We had a spate in the past 2 months or so of staff absence, frankly due to COVID and due to isolation, and that's hurt us quite badly. But we're coming back out of that now. But the impact is mainly felt, frankly, on our street cleansing side, because we have to take the crews from that and the drivers in that particularly to support our refuse collection side, because that's been our priority. So I know there will have been missed roads in your ward, and that's missed roads across every ward. But looking across the city, the picture is broadly okay. But there's one collection miss, one too many. I'd also make an appeal for people to park properly. We have some very large vehicles that we have to try and get down roads, and if you've got a van or a car parked inconveniently, we can't get the wagon down there safely, and we can't complete the collection. For most of the COVID period, actually, the biggest problem we had with collecting our waste wasn't missing crews, it wasn't vehicle breakdowns, because those are largely gone away with the replacement of the fleet. The biggest problem we had was access to roads, and one badly parked car can stop us getting access and stop us getting our vehicle down there. And if we can't get our wagons down there, the fire service can't get their trucks down there either. So it's a bit of an appeal, please park sensibly, and it helps us do our job.
Councillor Akhtar, do you want to add anything?
Yes, so I intend to carry on doing the work I'm doing in terms of deterring flight over, having some more planters put in, and having some more WL lines to stop the parking. Hopefully that the extra enforcement, the warden issuing the fines, will then start picking this up, because of course badly parked vehicles have stopped you from doing stop the waste. So hopefully that will help. The other thing is that in terms of the parking that you just mentioned, John, bollards and railings will be going in. So me and the local engineer would do a walkabout with the contractor and mark up the different spaces. I've gone onto social media and residents and asked for residents' opinions and suggestions. So got quite a lot of locations. So we're going to go ahead and have a meeting. I believe it's next week, or maybe I believe it's next week or the week after, I think. And go out and mark up the location. So hopefully that will then again help the waste trucks when they're doing their rounds every week. So and the other thing is, I think that I'm really glad and happy that we've got loads of community groups that are doing the regular litter picks, especially Friends of the Park. We've got one other litter group on Somerville Road they look after their street and go into the Digby Park. Quite a few other litter groups, litter picking groups that do their bit on a regular basis. So thank you very much. And we've even got children joining in, making posters to educate everyone, and we've got them posters up in Small Heath Park. The thing is that Chair, I just wanted to also add that Small Heath Park, well, Parks is also under your portfolio, John. So that's my other big concern, that we haven't had anything done after many attempts of trying to get the park pond or lake cleared up, and we've got, it's just really bad. We've got animals dying in there. It's been fly tipped really badly, and I know that ranger, we don't have park ranger as well because of what happened, the incident that took place before lockdown. But can you tell us, please, John, what is happening with the cleanup of the park, and whether we can get some more in to the park, please?
So whether we can get what into the park? Sorry, it was great. You broke out that last phrase.
Yeah, so some more lighting or something like that to make the park a bit more secure and safer.
Okay. I'll take that first bit first. No, I got all of that, Councillor Acton. That's fine. I'll take the lighting bit first. I'm afraid there is no prospect of putting lighting in the Small Heath Park. The vast majority of parks in the city are not lit. Where we have a small number that have bits of highway running across them. So Foxholly's Park in my own ward has one path that is legally public highway, and that is lit and maintained by the council. All the other paths are not lit. Our parks formally close at dusk, and we do not advise people to use them after that point. Lighting the parks, it doesn't necessarily fix the problem, because unless you're going to put up floodlights like Nadju Stadium, you're still going to have bits of the park that are going to be in darkness. I had to go out to one of the parks in Selly Oak, because I can't recall which one it was, where we had a woman attacked on there. I shot on a lit path, and I went out there to see what it was like. I went out there at 10 o'clock at night. And you're okay on the path because it's reasonably well lit, but because your eyes aren't adjusted to the darkness, you go 6 foot off the path and out of the pools of light, and you can't see anything. Somebody could be standing just a few yards away from the path, and you wouldn't see them. Lighting parks does not solve the problems. Actually, lighting can, in fact, almost make problems worse. I was talking yesterday to Small Heath Leadership Academy, and they've put some lights in on, is it Hawker Road, one of the roads behind the academy, to try and deter drug users. And they've actually found that they find it handier. They can come along, the light will come on, and they can see what they're doing. So lighting, I'm afraid, is not going to happen. There's also a significant cost to doing it, and the money simply isn't there to manage that. Discussion then usually had with the police about how they're going to improve safety across Small Heath and across the park. That's something that they have the responsibility for. As you said, we haven't got a ranger in the park at the moment. The ranger that we did have, there was one permanently deployed there. We had to withdraw them because they were threatened, and we simply can't put our people at risk like that. We have got some work going on with Friends of the Small Heath Park regarding the lodge, and working on a project on that. That's a long-term project over the next couple of years. See whether they can put together an appropriate bid to take that on. But again, that has to be sustainable from our point of view. We'd like to bring it back into use, it needs to be sustainable. We've got some work going on into the Mugwell Gardens. There's some investment going in there. And as for the animals in the pond, yes, we did lose some birds to avian botulism, which isn't something that is a major problem for human beings, but it is a problem for the birds, and that's caused. So working memory here, that's caused by bacteria that normally lie at the bottom of the pond, and if it gets disturbed, then it can float to the surface and affect the birds. There's also, as a side issue, there was an outbreak of avian influenza earlier this year, but that was a national issue that DEFRA had to deal with. And there is a problem with duckweed on that, which is, again, that's just a naturally occurring thing. Algae and duckweed do naturally occur, and there's really very little we can do to control it. So unfortunately, that is something to put up with in terms of the pond. The park is litter picked regularly, it is patrolled regularly, and certainly dead birds and everything like that should be removed virtually on a daily basis. So if that's happening, they'll need to know about that, and I'll pick it up with the crews who are doing that, because that pool should be inspected daily.
Is there anything that we can do to have that cleaned out, please? Because that was supposed to be done a long time ago, and I think it's quite important to avoid any. I think it's a health and safety issue. I mean, that was supposed to be done a long time ago, according to the parks manager. It's not being done.
So sorry, I couldn't hear what you wanted me to do. Again, lost the very start of what you're saying.
What Councillor Akhtar is saying, John, is that we've raised this matter and it should have been done some time ago, but nothing's been done to clear up the lake.
Clear it from what? I was down there a couple of weeks back.
What we're saying is that the lake should have been cleaned up some time ago, because
from what? I was down there a couple of weeks ago.
You know, the bacteria that has built up inside the pond.
There's bacteria, and there's also been a lot of fly tipping. Pieces of plastic, large items being fly tipped into the lake. And I think that's what's caused the bacteria that you mentioned at the bottom of the lake, and that's what's led to these birds dying. So just wanting to ask if that's still going ahead, the cleaning of the lake.
I mean, it's been almost maybe a decade, 10 years since that lake was cleaned, because you see, I remember the last time it was cleaned, they took out the debris, they took out all the waste from the pond, and what happened was that it was removed and taken to the Waverley Road side of the park, and that's where it was buried. So that happened almost 10 years ago or something, at least.
I've got to say that there is no budget to clean out the pond, and there is. I don't think there's any way of actually us of removing the bacteria. That it is naturally occurring, and even if we had some way of clearing it out completely, it would recur very rapidly. It can't be removed. It just exists naturally. But I was down there a couple of weeks back, and it didn't seem to be in a bad condition then. But so I'll happily have a look around again when I'm down there next. But as far as I'm aware, it was in reasonably clean condition when I was down there.
We have a question from Sadiq Hussain in terms of data. What he's asking is, John, do you have any data in terms of what's successful and unsuccessful prosecutions for dumping?
Unsuccessful? No, I can't tell you. Give me a second. I will tell you what we've done so far, or between January and June this year, which is a bit quieter, because bear in mind prosecutions tend to start sort of a year in advance and actually coming to trial and to conclusion. But so far this year, up till June, we have. So I'm just doing a quick count. So I've actually got a list of this, and I'll send it out to the councillors. We have had 32 successful prosecutions, which resulted in £13,500 in fines, best part of £15,000 in costs. I put that in perspective. We've secured 15 grand back in costs. We asked for nearly 40. Taking prosecutions is a cost to the authority, but we're doing it because it needs to be done. So there's about 32 such prosecutions up till June, and there'll be more in the pipeline. And we have had 311 people convicted of littering, with £64,000 in fines and £40,000 in costs. We get a better proportion of costs for littering than we do for fly tipping. We get about 3/4 of our littering costs back. We get some about 40% of our fly tipping costs back, and that's in the gift of the court. We you know, we'll go for jail time and everything, but we don't get that. The courts decide on punishments.
Okay. John, I'm conscious of time. It's 7:30 now. Thank you for coming along. We very much appreciate you coming along today. It's given us the opportunity to ask some questions. It's also given you an opportunity to be able to answer some of the questions the residents have posed and to give an insight into the work of the waste service. Your portfolio has been very important, probably one of the most pivotal in our area, because that is what myself as well as Councillor Akhtar, we receive a lot of complaints. We have the large park in Small Heath as well as the waste service and the waste being collected. So, but nevertheless, thank you for coming along. We may invite you again at a future meeting. Thank you very much.
Anytime.
I'd like to welcome Liam Byrne, Member of Parliament, to the Ward Forum meeting. Thank you for coming along, Liam. You have Kathleen Lloyd. She is joining also from Jess Phillips' office. I think Jamie Tennant is also here online from your office. Next item on the agenda is Small Heath Ward Plan as well as a Ward Action Plan. You want to just come in, Liam, start off with things, and then we can start making a list of issues.
Sure. So good evening, everybody, and hope this finds you well. So although this is a ward forum for the local council, as the members of Parliament, we thought it was important that we come along and make sure our representatives are here. As you know, geography is slightly against us in Small Heath. The ward is actually split into 3 constituencies. So I represent north of the Coventry Road, Jess Phillips represents south of the Coventry Road, and then we've got a small slice in the west, which is represented by Shabana Mahmood. That makes things quite complicated, but what we've sought to do since we came out of lockdown as a group of MPs working with the councillors, try and draw up a set of hot topics that we as MPs can help drive through. Obviously, our day job is in Parliament. You elect us to go to the House of Commons to debate laws and budgets there in Parliament. That's an important platform for us to raise issues of concern. Things like universal credit, the national insurance rise, the collapse in funding in our schools. You know, these are all kind of big issues that we campaign on in Parliament. But I want to touch on 4 sets of issues which have come up to us as MPs and which we've agreed with Jess and Shabana will be issues that we can help row in behind. So issue number 1 was obviously ward management. We wanted to make sure that there were ward forums and a ward action plan. Ward action plan, I think we're about to go on to. You're in the ward forum now. Second, cleaner environment. So we've heard from John O'Shea. We understand the issues, but I don't think any of us are satisfied with the state of street cleaning. It's taken us some time now to actually get a proper spreadsheet of which roads are swept when and with what. And when we got the list back, there's about 600 streets in Hodge Hill constituency, for example. But what really kind of surprised me when I went through it was the number of streets which are allegedly swept with mechanical street sweepers. I haven't seen mechanical street sweepers on many of the roads where it is alleged that they happen. And so what we're going to actually start doing now, having confirmed that the council does believe this schedule to be true, is we're going to just start doing random samples with you. So, you know, for those of you who live in my constituency, you will start getting what seem like random letters from me basically saying, well, the council tells me that your street is supposed to be swept by a mechanical sweeper every week or 2. Can you please tell me when was the last time you saw it? So please, if you get one of those letters through, please just let me have the information back. We'll make it super easy to just kind of take a picture and email it back so that it's nice and simple. Strategically, I am now convinced, and again, this is a view shared by Jess and Shabana, that we need to drive behind actually an idea that Councillor Akhtar put to us some time ago, which is to create a business improvement district down the Coventry Road. Now, I've looked at these in depth in Soho Road over in Handsworth, and it's been transformational. Basically, the way it works is you ask traders to pay a little bit more in business rates each year. And with that money, the traders themselves, doesn't go to the council, it's kind of ring fenced. The traders themselves decide how that money's spent. So on the Soho Road, they probably raise about £180,000 a year, but they have been able to use that money to put in place extra street cleaning, extra parking enforcement, which is a complete nightmare on Coventry Road. They've been able to put in place security staff to crack down on shoplifting and the like, as well as extra cameras. If you go to the Soho Road now, it's a completely different business environment to what it was 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a game changer. And so I think for the long term, well, actually for the short and medium term, that is what we're going to need in Coventry Road. So we have started those negotiations with the council. They basically need to kind of put together a map. And the art of doing these maps is you need to kind of draw them in a way that actually brings in a number of businesses with quite significant rates bills, because they end up doing the heavy lifting. So if you drew a map that basically went from the Blues ground down to the Asda, you would then get 2 big anchor tenants that would pay a lot of the business rates. The burden would be quite slim for most of the ordinary traders. But crucially, it does have to be business led. Ultimately, the traders on the road have to vote for it. I've spoken to enough traders to think there's enough traders who would go for it, because at the end of the day, it's good for business. It's good for sales, it's good for jobs, it's good for a better environment. So that, I think, is something that we'll be able to push ahead with quite quickly as soon as we get the maps back from the council. I have to say they are slightly late in getting back to us with this. We did ask for it about 2 months ago and we've not seen it yet. So that was the second issue, a cleaner environment. The third issue is then the leisure services in the constituency, where I think all of us feel that Small Heath is getting a really short-changed. There are 2 parks that we focus on, so Digby Park as well as Small Heath Park, as well as Small Heath Leisure Centre. Now, Small Heath Leisure Centre, which is in Shabana's slice of the ward, we now know, having done exhaustively the survey work, that that will take about £3 million to bring back into use. That's a significant amount of money, which the council doesn't have. And so talks are now open with Sport England, but I think it is going to be realistically 5 or 6 months before the council gets to take a decision on what is the future of Small Heath Park. But what Jess and I feel in particular is that we do need a significant campaign around upgrading leisure facilities in the ward. It's a busy ward, it's a packed ward. We've got high rates of obesity, we've got low rates of physical activity. We need a good environment where it is easy to stay healthy. So John talked a little bit about Small Heath Park. On Digby Park, obviously much smaller, there we're bringing a Friends of the Park group together, and we'll be trying to basically emulate what we've done in Ward End Park, which is in another part of my constituency, as you know, up in Ward End, where through quite patient work with the Friends group over the last 2 to 3 years, we've brought in about £1.2 million worth of funding to completely upgrade Ward End Park. That will fall into place over the next year and a half. We just announced this week, in fact, £75,000 from High Speed 2 to clean up the pond there, amongst other things. So we do know that these things are possible. We've worked in that instance with Heritage Lottery Fund, as well as Sport England, as well as High Speed 2. But ultimately, you've got to have a friends group that is strong, that has got a constitution, that has got a little bit of experience, because they have the front up the bid. We did a lot of the heavy lifting with funders, we did a lot of the survey work, we did a lot of the research, we kind of packaged the bids together, but it's got to be led by a group of local residents who are going to kind of make things happen. But that is the approach on a much smaller scale that I think we can get to work on Digby Park. The final area that I wanted to touch on then was around crime, antisocial behaviour and speeding. So as you probably know, we have lost about 2,000 officers from West Midlands Police over the last 7 or 8 years. And guess what? If you cut police officers, crime goes up. That is exactly what has happened. We are now fighting hard to get neighbourhood policing teams rebuilt. Simon Foster, the new Police and Crime Commissioner, who was elected in May, stood on a platform of getting neighbourhood policing stronger. They are now finalising their budget at West Midlands Police. Again, I mean, they're slightly slow for my liking on this. So They have committed to basically increase the strength of the Small Heath team. We've kind of said, great, by how many? We are still waiting for an answer from the Chief Constable, which we're chasing down. But as soon as I get that, I'll share that with you. And then the final point that I wanted to just flag was on HMOs, because that has been a significant concern for a lot of people. So there is basically a huge gap in the law, which makes it almost impossible for Birmingham as a council to stop HMOs opening. It's a massive money spinner. Again, there's a lot of organised crime involved in setting these things up. They're often used basically as fronts for money laundering. But the gap in the law means that Birmingham gets taken to court if they basically try and stand in the way of HMOs opening up. There's also very poor inspection powers. And it's very difficult to actually check that the right level of care is being provided for HMOs, which should be providing care. So it's a very kind of free market solution. It's kind of this government all over. It's quite chaotic. And as a group of MPs, all 10 of us, we actually want to get the law changed so that Birmingham has actually got a much bigger set of powers to do something about this problem. Now, in Small Heath, we've got 146 HMO properties that between them have 455 claims. That is a lot. It's actually much lower than most other constituencies in Birmingham. So if you look at the Hodge Hill constituency, for example, and you add up all the HMOs in Hodge Hill, we're about 6th out of 10 in terms of the numbers. There's a lot more in places like Erdington, Perry Barr and Ladywood. Nonetheless, where we can basically trigger action is where you've got specific complaints. At the moment, only 4% of properties have actually been inspected. Personally, I think that is much too low, but, and you know, the council isn't psychic, to be fair to it. We do need specific intelligence about addresses that you think are a concern. So we need the address, we need the nature of the problem, we need the time of the problem. And again, I mean, feel free to email that through to me or Jess or Shabana, depending on where you live in Small Heath, and we'd be very happy to act on that. So that is probably a quick canter through the Small Heath action plan that we put together. Residents in the Hodge Hill bit of Small Heath have been mailed this, and as and when we get updates, we will obviously publicise those. If you want the quickest way to look at them, have a look at our Facebook page. So I'll stop there, and hopefully, you know, very happy to kind of take questions on any or all of that.
No question. I haven't got any questions so far from residents. In terms of, thank you very much for the briefing, Liam. Catherine, is there something which you want to add? Sorry, I can't hear you, Catherine.
Yeah.
You're okay, Catherine? Councillor Akhtar, you want to come in? We can't hear you.
Oh, hello.
Sorry,
Can you
yeah,
hear me now,
we
Chair?
can hear you.
Oh, right. Okay, Chair. So I was just saying, thank you to Liam for mentioning the business improvement district. I'm really glad that we've finally been able to make some kind of a progress. I hope that the drawings include the St Andrews Retail Park, as we do have the Morrisons there as well. So that's quite a big supermarket, and hopefully and the other supermarkets within that retail park would also be part of that. If we do extend that, if the council decides to extend that drawing a little further, we can also then include the McDonald's on the island. So that may be also something that we may want to consider. I think that I'd be very happy So Liam, I think hopefully that's something that we can arrange with Jamie and Catherine and Shabana.
Can I say
Visit the
sorry?
business.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Catherine, we can.
Catherine.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I'm having technical difficulties at a very poor time. I just sort of wanted to add. Is it okay if I add what Jess wanted me to say now?
Yes, if you can.
Okay. Sorry that it didn't work before. So she's very sorry that she isn't able to be here today. She's been pulled into the response to the Sarah Everard sentencing. Just in terms of what our office, well, Jess's office is doing and is planning to do in Small Heath, it's just a very quick run through. So we've sort of got a 12-month plan. We organised a meeting with Councillor O'Shea and Liam's office and John O'Shea's operatives in Small Heath Park. We have a community meeting planned in mid-October, and that will be with the police, local schools, and hopefully the relevant members of the cabinet. We are planning on holding monthly surgeries at St Cyprian's. Ideally, they'll be commencing in November, and we're hoping to launch a regular programme of litter picks alongside the schools, sort of as many as we can possibly fit in. And we are also also supporting everything that Liam said, and also particularly what Councillor Akhtar was saying about waste disposal from flats above shops. So that's just a very quick run through from our constituency.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for that update. Councillor Akhtar, if you want to come back.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going back to say that I'm quite impressed that, well, finally glad, should I say, I'm glad that the council has finally started doing the drawings. It would have been, it's something that I really want to put in place